If you could have lived in another historical period, which period would you choose?
I would have liked to live in ancient Rome just because it would have been really interesting to see what it was like, how they lived back then.
Which historical figure do you particularly admire?
I really admire Abraham Lincoln because of all the work that he did with changing the course of American history with the Civil War and the different laws that he proposed.
If you could have lived in another historical period, which period would you choose?
If I could choose another historical period to live in other than my own, I would choose to live in the 1920s because I love jazz music and I love to dance.
Which historical figure do you particularly admire?
I admire Oscar Wilde because I love his works and I love to be in his plays.
If you could have lived in another historical period, which period would you choose?
If I could have lived in another historical period, I would choose the colonial period because the fashion choices are easier.
Which historical figure do you particularly admire?
I admire George Washington because he was a great leader for our country.
If you could have lived in another historical period, which period would you choose?
I'd probably want to live in New York City in the 40s and 50s. I like jazz music a lot, and that was sort of the birth of bebop in New York. So it would have been fun to see Charlie Parker basically create a new style of music.
If you could have lived in another historical period, which period would you choose?
I think it would probably be the Victorian period because they always used to dress up so magnificently during the day, and I look around the streets nowadays and see people wearing jeans, and that seems very normal. So I think it would be very interesting to go back to a period like Victorian England when they dress very elaborately and see if that's normal and what's casual and what's well dressed. I think that would be really interesting. So nothing historical.
Which historical figure do you particularly admire?
Gosh, I'm not really sure. I do very much admire Shakespeare. That's probably a very typical answer, but I think his writing is absolutely phenomenal and very much ahead of its time when he was writing it. So I'd say that's the most influential person I can think of.